Thank you. I'm Ed McCann. I am the founder of Writers Read, and I'm your host for today's Dressing Up and Down event. And our mission is to create performance opportunities for writers, established and emerging, because it is all about craft and a writer's ability to share an engaging personal story. The stories in our live shows and podcast are a maximum of 650 words or a 5-minute spoken word performance. We are delighted to return again to City Winery's beautiful flagship location here on Manhattan's West Side to celebrate writers and writing with you. And this particular show represents a couple of important milestones for us. One is that by the time you all join us for that post-show reception that's happening in the gallery at 4 o'clock, we will have recorded today over 500 individual 5-minute stories. How great is that? And those stories are now part of a growing digital archive, and many of them will have a second and even a third life in our podcast and in our future broadcast. We are especially grateful that our show today is sponsored by the New York State Writers Institute, and I will tell you more about the Institute a little later in our show. But right now, I really just want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon to support good writing and the talented writers whose work that you are about to hear. Now, we humans are as concerned with style as practicality, and we expend extraordinary amounts of time, energy, money, emotion, buying, and then day by day, choosing the outfits we model for the world. And as Dolly Parton once said, you'd be surprised how much it costs to look this cheap. So whether we're hiking, or going to school, dressing for the prom, the grocery store, the theater, a funeral, a wedding, a game, the clothing that we put on to hide our nakedness sets us apart from everyone else, or at least we hope that it does. From the dozens of submissions we received on this topic, our eagle-eyed and hardworking editors have curated this program of stories reflecting the woeful and hilarious and joyful experiences of dressing up and dressing down. So let's get right to it. Writer Marshall Messer opens our show, and he is a recently retired high school English teacher and the author of the novel Change at Jamaica, set in 1970s New York in the era of Woodstock and Watergate. Marshall has been a cab driver, bartender, garbage man, actor, and he has played blues harp at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now, it's probably safe to say that each of those gigs came with its own particular outfit, but none had quite the international cachet that Marshall tells us about in his tale, Dressing Up in Stockholm, and that was not even a paying gig. Please help me welcome to our Writers Read stage for the first time, Marshall Messer.
You won't notice me in the photos, yet there I am, celebrating the National Book Award for Peter Matheson at Le Bernardin with Harry Evans and Tina Brown, embracing Philippe Petit at the premiere of Man on Wire, posing with Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea by the White House Christmas tree. My role is to accompany my wife, the editor, to hobnob with the nabobs, make witty chit-chat, laugh at people's jokes, exude bonhomie. Thanks to her, I've gotten to hang with many well-known writers and personalities: Carrie Fisher, John Waters, Masha Gessen. As the plus one, I think of myself as a Zelig, and like that eponymous Woody Allen character, I am an attendant lord, an unimportant person who turns up with surprising frequency in the darndest places. In 2019, for instance, we flew to Sweden to witness the conferring of the Nobel Prize on the Polish novelist Olga Tokarczuk. December in Stockholm averages 6 hours of daylight, snow, carpeted green spaces, frosted parked cars, and gilded railings. The wind sliced through us, but the public baths were rejuvenating. We would watch the ceremony on closed-circuit TV as seating at the Stockholm Concert Hall was limited. But the hot ticket in town was to the Nobel nightcap after party at a local university to which Becky wangled a last-minute invite. she'd had the foresight to pack a formal dress on the off chance, but gentlemen were required to wear white tie and tails. Rent a tux to go to a frat party, I said as we strolled through the Modern Art Museum. No thanks. Come on, she urged, it'll be fun. Maybe it was the jet lag, but I was feeling more like a -1. Perhaps you should go without me. We walked through the galleries, barely speaking to each other. Becky drifted away, and I found myself transfixed by a painting, a primitive oil. Two couples sway on a rustic dance hall floor, while the other patrons sit like wallflowers and watch. In the foreground, a blonde in a wine-red dress embraces a tall man in black who gazes accusingly at the viewer as if to say, "What the hell is wrong with you?" It reminded me of the first time I'd met Becky at a party. I'd asked her to dance with the silly line, "Come on, worm, let's wiggle." "Sorry, I've been a killjoy," I said, sidling up to her. "Sure, let's go." Ostelmann's dress and tuxedo were old hands at outfitting people for the Nobel festivities. The saleswoman said that they could have everything ready the following day. A prominently displayed poster explained that white tie and tails comprised a black tailcoat with silk facings, sharply cut away at the front, and black trousers with 2 rows of braid down each leg. Then there was the white stiff-fronted shirt, white stiff-wing collar, white studs and cufflinks, white bow tie, white low-cut waistcoat, and black formal shoes and socks. A white handkerchief was optional, as presumably was underwear. Formally attired, we arrived at Stockholm University at 11 p.m. and queued up in the cold to be admitted. Inside, we were photographed in our finery. Becky looked smashing in a dark green off-the-shoulder, ankle-length velvet gown. Me, I felt like a Henry James character, sans facial hair. And yes, with underwear. After a stiff belt at the tequila bar, we meandered through the rooms, admiring ice sculptures and nodding at partygoers. In the Motown lounge, people were dancing to the Four Tops. Becky elbowed me. "Come on, worm, let's wiggle." Sugar pie, honey bunch, you know that I love you. Can't help myself. I love you and nobody else. Wop, wop. A few hours later, I was in the men's room checking my look in the mirror. Next to me was Michelle Mayer, the Nobel Prize winner in physics. I offered my congratulations. "You look so familiar," he said. He didn't know me from Adam. Nobody did. But damn, I looked good.
Minette Coleman, a member of the Harlem Writers Guild, grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, where as a teenager she wrote entertainment reviews for the Atlanta Daily World. And as a drama major at Guilford College in Greensboro, she appeared in several productions and contributed to her college newspaper. Her work has been published in literary journals, and she's the author of 3 historical novels. The 4th novel, The Hair Women, will be published later this year. It appears that on laundry days at Minette's house, there's more going on than wash, rinse, and spin, as she explains in her story, A Man and His Jeans. We're delighted to have her back on our stage today. Please welcome Minette Coleman.
It was the age of Aquarius, and nothing about my blind date's wardrobe suggested he'd be my baby's daddy. His attire was a graphic t-shirt and bell-bottom jeans displaying the Rolling Stones logo, red lips and tongue, right on the crotch. On the rear, another colorful patch announced, "It's all pink inside." Being a former good little Catholic schoolgirl, it took me a while to grasp that one. But despite the jeans, he won my heart, and we were married, and his afro was corporately tamed to match his suit. Once home, though, he put on those damn jeans, which I left folded neatly in a distant corner of the bedroom because their smell assaulted my senses. If you've ever seen a man take something from the dirty clothes hamper, sniff it, then put it on, you realize Mars and Venus have contrary standards for what's clean. I soon realized that tampering with a man's favorite denim could be grounds for divorce. So I held my tongue and pinched my nose to promote marital bliss. One Friday, I washed those jeans. The lips fell off. I was sewing the patch back on when he walked in from work, halting in his tracks, ready to fight. I got no, "Honey, I'm home" kiss. I got the look. "What happened?" he asked, removing his tie and opening his white shirt like he needed air. "Your Rolling Stones patch fell off in the washer." He was livid. "You washed my jeans?" "Why did you wash my jeans?" "Did I ask you to wash my jeans?" "I was doing laundry," I responded. "They weren't bothering you." I inhaled their freshly washed scent. They smelled to high heaven. He was appalled. "They smelled just fine." Not to a woman with an olfactory sense most hunting dogs envied. Guys like their jeans seasoned, wearing them until they fall apart. As newlyweds, we disagreed over how the toilet paper should be hung, how to load the dishwasher, and why, oh why, didn't I squeeze the toothpaste from the bottom? Now this man, on the rise in corporate America, added quarreling about his wearing dirty, smelly jeans to our repertoire. I explained. They were so stiff, I had to pre-soak them. Jeans are supposed to be stiff. "You never washed them," I screamed, frustrated. Unmoved, he replied, "So?" Once the lips were back on the crotch, he put them on, grunting, "They feel funny." "They should, they're clean." I never wanted to touch them again. 3 weeks later, the pink inside patch ripped. As if they'd never been a point of contention, he showed me his wounded pants. The scent of incense and weed so intense, I pushed them aside. Flaunting his sexiest smile, he slid a muscular arm around my waist. Feigning innocence, I asked, "What do you want me to do?" Warm lips touched my neck. "Sew it?" I didn't respond, so he kissed my shoulder. "Please." I sighed. "You want me to sew your stinky jeans?" He drew me closer. "They're not stinky." As he nibbled on my ear, I whispered, "I'll wash them then, but if I fix them first, so you gotta let me wash them." He would have pulled away, but I quickly turned to face him. "Let me wash them every other week." My fingers pressed his lips. "Please." Trying to defend his denim between kisses, he finally acquiesced. "How about once a month?" I moved closer. "And I won't soak them. They'll be as hard as you like." Those jeans remained in the family for 8 years. The patches lost their luster long before he bravely trashed the pants. Naturally, he treated the next pair with the same no-wash reverence. But I bided my time. I knew how to get them washed. Who knew laundry could be foreplay?
Native New Yorker Jack O'Connell lives on Long Island with his wife Margaret, and he knows how lucky he is not only to be an actor, but also a working actor. You may recognize him from roles in film and TV, among them Doubt, Big Night, Inside Llewyn Davis, Mad Men, Nurse Jackie, Vinyl, and The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. He also recently had a guest starring role in Netflix hit Kaleidoscope. In his story, Doffing the Hat, Jack charts a moment in history when haberdashery really did make the man until it didn't. We're always happy to see Jack take the stage, regardless of what he's wearing. Please say hello to Jack O'Connell.
Hey, soldier, where's your hat? Quartermaster couldn't find one to fit me, sir. It was January 1963. I was in the reception company at Fort Dix, New Jersey, ready to start 2 years of service in the United States Army. For 3 days, this soldier-to-be walked around without the Castro-style blocked fatigue cap that was the uniform of the trainee. What? Your head's too big for this man's army? Yes, sir. No, sir. I finally received my hat. It'd be one of many that I would wear and come in contact with throughout my Army career. By June, I was on my way to Fort Myer, Virginia, for assignment to the 3rd Infantry, the Old Guard, a mostly ceremonial unit that worked in and around Washington, D.C. Our duties included funerals at Arlington Cemetery, sometimes several a day, also parades and other ceremonies in and around the District of Columbia. We were issued all types of uniforms, from dress blues to tropical worsted, overcoats, raincoats, white gloves, fatigues, and of course, hats. As infantrymen, we would spend 2 weeks per year in the field to stay ready for deployment if need be. Helmets to match, of course. We were responsible for keeping all uniforms in pristine condition. Each platoon had an ironing board, and laundry was taken out once a week. In one of our companies lived the tomb guards, whose duty was guarding the tomb of the unknown soldier. These guys were the cream of the crop, and their uniforms were inspected daily. Our shoes were expected to be spit-shined, and guys would spend hours on this chore. Perhaps most important, though, the bills of our hat were patent leather and would gleam in the sun as we paraded around the Washington Monument on Sunday afternoons. The men assigned to the caisson section were not only responsible for their uniforms, but also the tack that adorned their horses that took part in the uniform, that took part in the funerals. The U.S. Army Band, also known as Pershing's Own, had their own special uniforms with red hats, dark blue jackets, and always white gloves. They were not part of the Old Guard, but were billeted at Fort Myer. The assassination of President Kennedy in November of 1963 would bring scores of uniforms and uniform hats to his funeral. There would be cadets from the Irish Defense Force who would toss their hats upon the fresh grave after completing their infamous Queen Anne salute. Pipers of the Black Watch of the Royal Highlanders in kilts and bonnets would play Barren Rocks of Aden, and some would leave their bonnets on the hallowed ground. Others at the cemetery on that Blue Monday were members of the Army's Special Forces, known as the Green Berets, created by JFK in October of 1961. Their Sergeant Major, Ted Munter, placed his Green Beret on the grave in gratitude. He was the first to start the tradition, and that beret is in the JFK Presidential Library in Boston. Also in attendance was Charles de Gaulle, whose military stovepipe hat made his 6'5" frame increase another 6 inches. Standing there in a most decorated hat and uniform was tiny Haile Selassie, Emperor of Ethiopia. Queen Frederica of Greece also wore a distinctive hat as well. Me? I would be in the company mess hall preparing coffee and lunches for our 200 company troops who provided a cordon on Pennsylvania Avenue. I was very comfortable in cotton white cook whites and paper sanitary hats, adjustable in my case. In spring of 1964, my duty was as a guide at JFK's gravesite, proudly wearing my Class A's with a shiny brass-sewed eagle perched above the bill, answering questions from tourists and high school students on class trips. What is ironic here is that JFK was the first president to appear hatless at his inauguration. And haberdashers 60 years ago thought that he had put an end to the men's hat industry. Upon my honorable discharge in January of 1965, I would point my old Plymouth north on the Baltimore-Washington Parkway and start dreaming of a future. It would not include uniforms, especially hats, and I would let my hair grow as long as I liked. It was the 60s, man, and I was a civilian.
Tina Barry was the world's crankiest secretary turned textile designer who then dove headfirst into writing. Among her gigs was style editor for a children's clothing publication and her favorite, food critic for a newspaper that she says was well worth the few extra pounds. Her humor pieces have appeared in the New York Daily News, The Forward, and elsewhere. She's written 2 poetry collections. She teaches poetry and short fiction. And after living in Brooklyn for a few decades, Tina and her artist husband, Bob, now live in the Hudson Valley, where she's still getting used to her neighbor's chickens. In her story, Hosed, Tina recalls going a bit off script at her best friend's wedding thanks to an unsuspecting best man and an uncooperative pair of pantyhose. Please welcome for the first time, Tina Barry.
I expected Carla's wedding plans to drive me crazy, and they did. We had been friends since our days at Camp Beth Israel. Carla was the good kid who flirted with brainy Ben Weinstein. I snuck cools with the art counselor. At 24, she earned an MBA and an engagement ring. I received an MFA in painting. Wise choice, she said. I'll have a husband and 3 kids. You'll have a studio with 30 cats. You make my life sound like heaven, I said. As her wedding drew closer, Carla's texts became more like bridal haiku. Veil or tiara, delicate or aglow with gems, the Vera Wang is lovely. The evening before her wedding, I realized that I had forgotten to buy pantyhose. In my New Jersey town, there were no 24-hour CVS, and on Sunday, with the state's blue law, all the stores were closed. I considered going the bare legs route, but mine were whiter than the bride's gown. In my dresser, I discovered an old lint-covered pair of tights in the ecru color favored by grandmothers. Tights ripped from knee to crotch, rips a bear might have made. I didn't need Freud to see the symbolism in my tattered legwear. My emotions were torn. I was losing my dearest friend. Well, not exactly losing her, but I knew our relationship would change. Luckily, my dress covered everything from the knees up, and boots took care of the rest. If I took small steps and didn't topple over on the dance floor, no one would guess my secret. At the reception, I was the only single woman at a table of married couples. When Carla stopped at my seat, she said, "Guess who's catching the bouquet?" I looked around to see who that might be. "Looks like you're the next bride," said Adam, who sat with an arm around his wife's shoulders. "You get to wear the garter." "I don't wear the garter," I said. I had opted out of every wedding invitation, so this ritual was a mystery. "You do," he insisted. "See Jason?" He gestured toward the best man thrashing wildly on the dance floor. "After you catch the bouquet, you'll sit, and he'll put the garter on your leg." I was out of my seat and running toward the exit when Carla grabbed the microphone and shouted, "Will all the single ladies please stand up?" "Please," I prayed, "don't let me be the only one." I wasn't. Carla's recently divorced Aunt Eleanor wept loudly, "I'm not going up there." I took tiny steps to the center of the room. "This won't be much of a contest," Carla laughed, hurling the bouquet. Jumping was out of the question. I let it land at my feet. I squatted carefully and lifted the flowers to shouts of "Mazel Tov." A chair was pushed beneath me. I sat facing the guests, my dress wrapped tightly. The best man kneeled before me. When the garter reached my knee, he nudged my hands. "Can you put it on my wrist?" I whispered. He stared. "It goes on your thigh." We compromised, with the garter snugly circling the top of my boot, as if it, and not me, would be the next bride. When Carla returned from her honeymoon, I told her about the pantyhose debacle. "Oh," she said, "I wondered about the sudden modesty." 5 years later, it was me leaving irritating texts about dresses and shoes and table settings. Carla promptly answered them all. On the day of my ceremony, I was radiant, and Carla was a stunner, beaming broadly, designer-clad. But as I watched her do the hustle, I wondered if, beneath that perfect suit, there wasn't a tiny tear in her hosiery. "That's my girl," I thought, and refilled both our glasses.
Raina Marder-Genton is a recovering attorney. And by the way, we've noticed that there's a lot of recovering attorneys who are writers. We've noticed more and more of this. But she spent most of her career appealing the convictions of murderers, drug dealers, and thieves, all experiences that helped inform the writing of her novels. Raina, her husband, and their two kids live in Westchester County, and the story she contributes to today's show on Dressing Up and Dressing Down takes us to one of the great discount emporiums of legend, at least for New Yorkers of a certain age, some of whom I guarantee are in this very room. Here to share her story, I'll stick to sweats. Please say hello to Raina Genton.
I have an aversion to shopping. This isn't a statement lightly made by a girl who grew up in Great Neck, retail mecca of Long Island, where your first solo outing clutching your mother's credit card to purchase new shoes at Jill Doors is a sacred rite of passage far surpassing any religious milestone. An inability to shop, just the thought of which gives me a rash, is a serious social affliction. My shopping anxiety, like all good disorders, can be genetically traced to my parents, Depression-era babies who knew the value of $1. Although we lived in an affluent suburb, my mother never once entered any of the dozens of high-end clothing stores that lined the main thoroughfare of our town. Instead, when I needed a sweater for school or a dress for a party, I was schlepped to Queens. And not just anywhere in Queens, only to Loehmann's. There, under the purposefully dimmed lights and surrounded by our fellow bargain hunters, my mother would patiently search the racks, waiting for that eureka moment when she would uncover a name brand amidst the schmatzes, inexplicably marked down to $4.99. That it was not last year's style, but a style from the last century, and not even close to my size, did not dampen my mother's treasure hunting enthusiasm. Trying on clothes at Loehmann's was its own brand of torture. I'd like to meet the man who came up with the idea of the communal fitting room. I say man because it is unfathomable that any woman would think it was a good idea for girls and women ranging from 13 years old to 93, weighing 85 to 285 pounds, standing 4'6" to 6'4", unblemished or covered in eczema, and representing every level of fitness from superwoman to couch potato, to strip down to their underwear in front of each other. Added to the general distress of parading around half naked, everyone else's mother and aunt and grandmother had an opinion on whatever you were trying on. That hemline is too short for a Shiva, one bubby clucking her tongue would say. Another with varicose veins like a subway map would comment, how will you catch a man in the wedding at that? At the wedding in that? Show a little leg. For really special occasions, I would be dragged into the corner of the fitting room where Lena held court. Lena knows fit, my mother would say. Lena has excellent taste. Lena was an elderly woman with no known surname, with a strong Eastern European accent that I couldn't begin to understand, and who fit into her own clothes, much like the stuffed cabbage she'd had for lunch. When Lena pronounced the dress appropriate and a good fit, there was no more discussion. My inability to shop like a normal person is not only attributable to my mother's allegiance to Loehmann's. My father played his part as well. The shopping destination that my father approved of was the Lower East Side. By the 1970s, what once had indeed been a haven of good value for Jews with a feel for a deal and a yen for a pickle was largely a shadow of its former self. Some things were set in stone. One never bought luggage except on the Lower East Side, and certainly not bras, underwear, socks, or sunglasses. Once as a teenager, I begged my parents to let me go into town and buy a pair of the super snug Jordache, Gloria Vanderbilt, or Sassoon jeans that were all the rage among my junior high school peers. Instead, they hauled me to the Lower East Side, where they triumphantly bought me one heavily discounted pair of Calvins and a striped Izod velour top to, quote, make an outfit. You've heard of PTSD. I have post-traumatic shopping disorder. I'm still so scarred that these days, except for special occasions, I stick to my sweats.
After Brian Zupan earned his PhD in clinical psych from UCLA, he spent decades conducting research before segueing into new adventures in the form of writing, acting, and singing. The National Arts Club, the Salmagundi Club, the Chain Theater here in New York City have hosted recent performances of his work, and he's a member of the Winterlight Productions Theater Company and the Shakespeare Lab, New York City. He lives in Manhattan, but still regularly visits his boyhood home in Minnesota. And in Brian's story, Dressing in Time and Place, we learn how evocative a wardrobe can be, from the steel-toed boots he wore while chopping wood to the bow tie that accessorized his first suit. Please give a warm welcome to Brian Zupan.
The driveway to my old home, more grass than gravel these days, is lined by towering groves of Norway pine and blue spruce, planted by my father in the year of my birth. Having weathered decades of often harsh seasonal conditions, the trees still stand in majestic fashion, providing the most honest and pure measurement of time that I know. In all their vibrancy, they lead the way to a century-old two-story house nestled within a lush yard and sweet-smelling meadows, which serve as entree points to the accompanying 40 acres of North Woods, an ever-changing cornucopia of old and new growth, touched only by the forces of nature. This place marks where I grew up and where I come back to breathe in solitude. The house is quite ordinary and, much like me, regularly needs some sort of inner or outer attention or repair. In preparation for the day's work, I dress up. Not like, yet not unlike the way I dressed up during the decades of corporate, academic, and government research positions I once held, always wearing the suit best fitted for the job at hand. Today, my suit consists of a green plaid flannel shirt, blue bib overalls, double palm reinforced leather gloves, and well-worn leather boots. I swing my father's double-bladed axe with the same familiarity, rhythm, and pleasure as in my adolescence, but now with greater wisdom, carefully reading each log's unique grain, striking with enhanced precision rather than pure strength. Wiping away the sweat from my brow with the sleeve of my shirt, the fabric is soothing to my touch, bringing me back to childhood when, at evening's end, I would cuddle into my mother's soft flannel nightgown as she sang to me, my weary eyes holding on to vivid images of floral patterns so lovely in detail that, for a moment, I could smell their sweet fragrance before drifting off into dreamy and unencumbered sleep. Lacing up my battered U.S. steel-issued boots, I methodically thread each eyelet and hook, establishing a snug yet comfortable fit. On one boot, worn and torn leather curls up, revealing darkened yet shiny steel-toed protective tips. The boots are remnants of 2 summers long ago when I worked pit labor and railroad track gang deep within the confines of an 8-by-1 mile open pit taconite mine. Ramped up iron ore production during summer months offered temporary employment to college students like me. Initially broken in walking over an uneven terrain of unforgiving rocks, these boots have long since been stalwart workmates of mine across multiple landscapes, reminiscent of the fortitude and durability of the people I knew, admired, and loved when I was coming up in the world. Summer employment in the taconite mine helped in part to fund my educational pursuits, paving a pathway that inevitably distanced me geographically and emotionally from much of my roots. The distance widened through the years, with and without my efforts. Now, never more eager, I seek ways to bridge that distance and understand the passage of time. Through a reflection in the bedroom mirror, I see my face as a youth. I am proudly wearing the blue suit of my boyhood, a crisp white dress shirt ironed with the utmost care by my mother, a bow tie resting in place as a result of my father's firm but gentle touch, and the laces of my wingtips tied snugly yet comfortably. Studying the reflection, I remember a distinct tingling inside, a feeling of excitement of the unknown, not unlike the tingle of excitement I feel years later whenever my partner and I have occasion to dress up for an event. Perhaps it is within the melding of such memories and associated emotions, elicited sometimes simply by what we are wearing, that the nonlinear, reciprocal nature of time, place, and who we are come full circle. To be honest with you, I'm still searching for that answer.
Hunter Klein is a Brooklyn-based writer, producer, teacher, former Little League umpire, and New York Jets fan. After graduating from the University of Pennsylvania with a degree in economics, Hunter realized he knew nothing about economics. So he pursued his other passions, teaching, writing, and comedy. With compatriots at the Upright Citizens Great Theater, he's performed throughout New York City and recently wrote, directed, and acted in a musical fiction podcast series entitled The Story of Heidelberg, which earned him a Silver Award at the National Audio Theater Festival. The existential question Hunter explores in his story, Tennis Shoes, is not so much what to wear and when, but what not to. I'm proud to invite him back onto our stage for the second time. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Hunter Klein.
When I was 8 years old, my friend Jacob was over at my house to play video games on the 3rd floor. Significantly, the 3rd floor was also the temporary address for my paternal grandparents, a place my unfettered grandmother could stretch her legs after a long drive, while my no-nonsense grandfather could cozy up with a book and nap, undeterred by the ululations of a house of 4 kids under 10. Quiet, except for Jacob and me. I don't remember if Pop-Up asked us to go downstairs. I was too wrapped in our game. But I do remember Jacob's face when Pop-Up shrugged, unbothered, and promptly removed all of his clothes, cap to Crocs, and sat on the couch beside us. Thus was my friend's introduction to my nudist grandparents. They weren't religious nudists, more cultural. In a way, we're cultural Jews. Not practicing much, but more in it for the community and the vibes. They wouldn't observe in public. Nope, my grandfather would don his typical cologne-soaked press polo, his gold watch obscuring the Black Panther tattoo inked during his brief stint in prison, and his trusty WWE hat. Back in the confines of their Florida home, though, all bets were off. On the couch, on the floor, on the mind of my poor mother. "It's insane, Stu," she'd lament of her in-laws. "Your mother just said she got back from a week-long cruise where they packed nothing but their tennis shoes." Of course, her concerns lay not in her own fears, her own peripheral glimpse of bonus extremities, but ours, which was fair. Because not only were we getting constant exposure, but worse in her mind, we were acclimating. And soon enough, to a certain extent, in the confines of our own home, with the notable exception of my scarred little sister, we were practicing. To my mother's chagrin and grandmother's unmitigated delight, clothes were no longer a part of the fabric of this family. Even my grandfather, in all respects a stern man, a jukebox of moral impartations, would be tickled at stories of 9-year-old me violating the dress code at the golf course for wearing jeans, and then violating it again when the jeans came off. Between lectures on reading and excuses, no breaks, his patented slogan, he'd take us to movies featuring topless women and bottomless men. And yet, Pop-Up would often remark about the love in our family, the honesty, the openness, the importance of being open. How discouragement and rebuke would say, do my speech-delayed younger brother more harm than good. Welcomeness, tolerance, nakedness. These were things my therapist mother could surely get behind. Our nudity levels declined as we got older, and unfortunately, so did our grandparents. After Pop-Up passed in 2021, we reflected on the laundry list of lessons he left us. My mom in particular noted how much she loved him for his actions, the role he played and hole he'd leave as a father and grandfather. It was true. I had gotten his WWE hat, but I missed him. And then, just a few months back, we visited my younger brother studying in Berlin. Now fully, unabashedly, unapologetically himself, he opted to take us myself, my parents, and my girlfriend to a bathhouse he'd heard of, unaware of the full extent of their textile-free policy. It was mortifying. My girlfriend stayed with my mom, eyes wired shut, dodging stray droops and sags like a special op, cemented to the lone pool where clothing was permitted, while my brother, father, and myself sat in our mandated skin suit, Dad cracking jokes with some new German friends. The attendant in charge shushed him up. This was to be a silent, towel-less sauna. There would be no laughter here. Except, of course, for my grandfather, beaming down at us like the sun in just his tennis shoes. We smile back, but can't help but look away.
Writers Read is a nonprofit literary organization with a mission to create and promote performance opportunities for writers. And in a publishing environment where it's often challenging to find or hear new voices, we take that mission seriously, and we work to create this quality platform for writers and an entertaining and memorable experience for you, our friends, and our guests. I've said this before, but at a time when the world around us can feel so negative and uncertain, gathering like this to share stories and fellowship can feel like a real gift and something that nourishes us all, plus, wine, which is also good. I'm proud of what we're building, and our all-volunteer team is working to scale up, to attract more writers, more followers, more listeners, and to establish a home on public radio where we belong, a change that will make the words of these talented writers available to a wider audience. A portion of the tickets you purchased for today's show flow through to us from City Winery, but our primary funding comes from you, our friends and our donors, funds that help offset some of our basic operating costs. If you're enjoying today's show, you can help us grow, and your donations, your investment in our mission, will help take us to the next level. So please consider a tax-deductible gift today in any amount to help us get there. There is a scannable code on the back of your program that will take you to a donation page on our website. And there's an address where you could also mail a check. The other thing you can do to help us is to take your program home with you today and give it to another writer or someone else who you think might be interested in what we do. We have a stack of extras during the reception because of a print overrun. Our printer explained to us why I only needed 150 programs, but it cost less to print 250. So I mailed some out as invitations in this last week, but we still have quite a few. But passing those along to the writers in your world might acquaint them with what we do and what our mission is, and we have open submissions happening. But thank you for your encouragement and support and for being here with us this afternoon, because we simply can't do what we do without you. We're going to pause here for a short break of about 15 minutes, during which our servers can refill your glasses and take food orders. And when you hear this bell, which is the very one that my late and sainted mother used to call us to dinner, please return to your seats for the second half of our show and more great stories about dressing up and dressing down. I'm Ed McCann. This is Writers Read. Well, welcome back to the second half of today's special Dressing Up and Down event. And before we bring up our next writer, I want to remind you that we are always working to feature new and diverse voices, and we're accepting submissions for upcoming shows. You'll see a little of that information in your program, but you'll also get the complete information on our website, writersread.org, under the Submissions tab, where you will see the topics that the prompts that we have up for our upcoming shows. Again, please take your program with you to share it with one writer in your life and tell them about what we're doing here. And please know that if you have questions or suggestions, you can always email me at ed@writersread.org. Thank you to all the people who made this day possible, from the folks here in the house like Jonah and our servers. I'm grateful to my partner, Richard Kolath. Thank you. Our editors, who read dozens and sometimes over 100 submissions to cull the dozen or the 14, and I'm always pushing the envelope because it's so hard to decline good work, but how many things can we really ask you to sit through in this time? But our editors, Stephen Lewis, David Masello, Lisa Donati Mayer, and Rhonda Zangwill, and especially to our production manager and chief technology officer and troubleshooter, Sarah Caldwell. Thanks to our volunteer assistants today, Rhonda Zangwill. But I'm especially grateful this day to our sponsor, the New York State Writers Institute at the University of Albany. And their mission is to explore and teach the craft of writing, to celebrate diverse voices in all genres, and to foster a vibrant community of readers and writers who engage in meaningful dialogue. It was founded by Pulitzer Prize-winning and MacArthur Grant recipient William Kennedy in 1983, who wanted to establish a visiting writer program. Part of that grant, as I understand it, came with a $15,000 a year, grant that he could direct in any way that he wished. And the University of Albany matched it. So for 5 years, they had a $30,000 budget, no staff, no office, but they had this idea and this plan, and they established this thing that has grown over the last 40 years. They're hosting 50 to 60 writers per year at their visiting writers program for informal seminars, writing workshops, and readings. And incidentally, Mr. Kennedy, at age 95, is still active in the organization. And you may know, for those of you who do not, William Kennedy, probably most known for Ironweed, right, which was then made into a motion picture with Jack Nicholson and Meryl Streep. The Visiting Writer Series tops the list of many of the programs and festivals and workshops conducted throughout the year. And the Institute's goal is to enhance and celebrate literature, writing, and performance, and to recognize the position of writers as a community within the larger community. And reading that line for the first time made my breath catch. The recognition of writers as a community within the larger community. It really resonates because for nearly a decade, Writers Read has been building community almost by accident. And the people who've drawn closer to our organization, and the people who, like yourselves, who attend our events and submit our work, are people that I have come to think of as my tribe, but it's really, we are a community within the larger community. And to have that recognition and that acknowledgement, and to have an organization really devoted to promoting that whole idea, feels like a remarkably good fit. So I'm very proud, and I feel like I stand a little taller today because of that association, and I would like to just acknowledge them with a hand. By the way, you can learn more about the Institute and its programs at their events at nyswritersinstitute.org. Lynn Edelson opens Act 2 of our show today. She has been writing memoir pieces for 15 years, and her narrative essays have appeared in the New York City Listen to Your Mother show, here at Writers Read, the Herstory blog, and elsewhere, and she was a finalist for the 2023 Eunice Williams Nonfiction Prize. Lynn is the mother of 2 grown sons, both of whom still refuse to buy her a beach house. Until she can convince them otherwise, she continues to live in the Hudson Valley with her husband, Michael, and their 2 dogs. The story Lynn brings to us today is entitled Wearing Eileen Fisher, an intricate tale that mixes and matches family, memory, and the proper attire for a funeral. We're delighted Lynn is back on our stage this afternoon, and now please give her a very warm welcome. Lynn Edelson.
You're wearing that to the funeral? I hear my mother say. Well, not exactly. My mother's been dead for 25 years. I say. What's the problem? She says nothing. She doesn't have to. I sigh heavily, pull the black Gap blazer out of the closet, and put it on over my black long-sleeve top and black sweatpants. I cannot believe you're wearing sweatpants, I hear her say. They're not really sweatpants, I protest. These are the expensive ones I got on sale at Anthropologie. They're tight and no one will ever know.
I'll know, she says. And whatever you're thinking, you keep those black high-top Converse sneakers in the closet. I don't argue. I'm already reaching for the black Italian leather tie-up boots I bought at Ms. Moo's years ago. Before I head down the stairs, I grab the mid-length Eileen Fisher black boiled wool coat I found at a resale shop last month. And even though my mother is horrified that I haven't dry cleaned it yet, they'll never know. My husband is waiting in the kitchen, car keys in hand, because we have only decided in the past 10 minutes to try to make it to the funeral. I glance at the COVID test on the counter, the one that came up negative, despite the week of coughing and stuffy nose and low-grade fever. I had planned to stay home, but Phyllis was my favorite cousin. She was the one who named me, who gave me chocolate when I wasn't supposed to have any, and who loved my mother more than she loved her own. Aunt Thelma, she cooed as they hugged and kissed each other. "We have the same fingers and toes," she'd say while holding up her hand, and they'd laugh and squeeze each other tighter. "I'm almost ready," I say. My husband looks at me and shakes his head. We have a 90-minute ride ahead of us. The service is at 12, the text from Phyllis's daughter said. It's now 11. "You're going to be late," I hear my mother say. "You know, these things, they never start on time," I reassure my husband. "Let me grab my bag." My bag is a small black LL Bean backpack, the one I use every day for shopping or hiking or running around the city. "Do not even think about it," my mother says firmly. "Just a second," I yell as I run back up to the bedroom. I quickly rummage through my closet and find the black Coach bag I got at TJ Maxx 10 years ago. On the way out of the house, I grab my mother's scarf, Aunt Thelma's scarf, the slightly frayed blue paisley acrylic one, the only one she ever wore, and the only one I wrap around my neck when the temperature goes below 60. We walk into the service 30 minutes late. Well, actually, we walked into the chapel because the service had already ended. My cousin's coffin is being lifted into the hearse, and throngs of people are making their way out of the double doors that we're trying to enter. "I'm so sorry about your mom," says a woman who is hugging my cousin Lisa. The woman is wearing a black Donna Karan dress with spiked black heels and tights, all probably from Nordstrom's. I pull my Eileen Fisher coat around me tighter. Lisa looks up from the woman's embrace and sees me standing there, her eyes wide with surprise. Within a moment, she is in my arms, not saying a word. I can feel her weeping, feel her grieving for the woman we both loved. We have not seen each other in more than 10 years, have never been especially close, but our mothers had the same fingers and toes. "You look beautiful," I hear my mother whisper, "but don't forget to dry clean that coat."
Jane Marks began her career as a 10th grade social studies teacher, then switched to social science editor at Random House before becoming a student at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. She's been a self-employed New York City tourist guide for nearly 40 years, and she's also a stand-up comic, storyteller, actor, and writer. She's written and performed in 2 solo plays produced by Artistic New Directions Theater Company, and says she wishes to die from exhausting her potential. Jane's story, playing dress up, is a unique take on a phrase we all love to hear: "That's a great color on you." It's a pleasure to welcome back to our stage Jane Marks.
I'm painting myself into existence. Finally, I see me. The self-doubter and the person who feels invisible is gone. I started this new picture of me in 1994. I am working as a tour guide for 14 years. Now I'm with a group from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. A woman in the sweetest of tones taps my shoulder and addresses me. "You look awful." It's that black skirt, gray sweater, and navy blue coat. If you're a funeral director, you're fine. But you're an artist, a firecracker about to go off. I'm a color expert. I know what I'm talking about. She continues, "The whites of your eyes, your teeth, your skin, they're golden. Egyptians colored their deities gold. Treat yourself the same. Start wearing orange." Snapped out of doldrums, I instruct the coach driver to stop at the Gap. We all get out and stretch. I go into the store and come back with a safety orange windbreaker. As if electric current surges through me, there's an immediate dopamine and serotonin rush. I'm smiling. Next, I'm experimenting with combinations of yellow, orange, and red. My sinking spells diminish. My dark thoughts disappear. I become more intoxicated with life. One early afternoon, I am in a teal green top, blue pants, pink sneakers, orange and gold scarf, and red hat. At the corner of West 45th Street and 6th Avenue, a woman's head pops out from the window of a yellow cab. She yells, "You look like fun." There's no one like you in Vero Beach, Florida, where we're from. Join us for today's Moulin Rouge matinee. We've an extra ticket. Then, when I'm leading a tour with a group from Abilene, Texas, and I hear giggles whenever I show up, I surprise myself. I brush it off. Then this guy confesses, "In our parts, no one wears more than 3 colors at once." It's your prerogative, I say. For me, this violet, blue, green, and orange are dancing. That night on the subway, a young lady gushes, "You're so stylish without spending a lot of money." How do you do it? I think and then answer. When you're in sync with your stance, face, and voice, you tend to stand out. Now it's 2018. It's 11:30 a.m. I'm in the Metrograph Theater, wearing a gold jacket, yellow sweater, blue pants, orange scarf, and silver Doc Marten boots. A man with a hairdo shaped like a pyramid looks at me. I'm used to this. I look right back at him. He says, "You're perfect for my friend's film. She's in the New School's documentary studies program. She's scouting now for her main character. Her final project is all about color. You are the person." I am her person. I become the subject of her film, Falling Forward. We bond over our shared love of the color orange. One of her classmates is from Finland. He has an artist friend who needs an older woman to be in a video installation for the 2022 reopening of Kiasma, Finland's modern art gallery. I fly to Finland. Then I appear on screen in a gray turtleneck, per the artist's instructions. But I'm producing enough dopamine and serotonin to handle any color miscue. The museum puts the project in their permanent collection. I'm giddy with the idea. I could be dead and someone could see my lips moving. Back in New York, I find myself wandering the aisles of Blick, an art supply store. The colors mesmerize. The manager looks at me. He presumes I'm a fine artist from my outfit. He asks, "What's your process? How do you get to know when you're satisfied it's finished?" I start with myself, I say. I play dress up. When I see who I am, I begin to paint. This canvas is a tinkerer's dream. I will always be working on it.
I seem to be getting a signal from my friends off stage here. Mihai Grunfeld. How do I not have a card here for you, Mihai? Are you in the program? Are you next on the program, Mihai? Is that what's happening? You know what? Let me figure this out, and let's go with David at the moment, who moved from New York City to Evanston, Illinois, and he has made, this is talking about David Masello, he's made his living as a writer and editor for more than 35 years. He never tires of looking at and sharing what he learns about New York in the minute-long self-narrated videos he posts on Instagram, and you'll find them under his name, David Masello, and it's a very worthwhile and illuminating account. I have learned a great deal about New York a minute at a time. David's career began as a nonfiction book editor at Simon & Schuster, and he went on to hold senior editorial positions in many magazines with ampersands in their titles, including Travel and Leisure, Art and Antiques, and Town and Country. David's written 3 books about art and architecture. He's a widely published essayist, poet, and playwright, and his work appears in the New York Times, Best American Essays, numerous literary art magazines, and small theater companies. He is currently executive editor of Milieu, a magazine about design and architecture. And in On and Off the Runway, the story David contributes to our show, he offers us a glimpse into the rarefied world of high fashion, where the line between public and private is as fluid as a model's stride. It's always a pleasure to welcome back to our stage David Masello.
One of my job titles at Town and Country magazine was men's fashion editor. And although I like to buy suits at Saks where I can speak my broken Italian to the tailors as they chalk the material, telling them of my grandfather, the tailor, I was in that job an emperor without clothes. During Fashion Week, I attended the most coveted of the men's runway events, the Zegna Fall Collection. Every invited guest had been assigned a seat, and to reach it, you had to course the length of the runway, a metal platform that took right-angle turns through what had once been a biscuit factory in the village. Bleaching spotlights bathed the runway surface, washing everyone along it in a kabuki white pallor, as people air-kissed, thumbed missives, slung off capes. I had recently interviewed Ermenegildo Zegna, Gildo, as he's known, by phone from his Milan office for the article. Our conversation focused on suit coat vents and buttons, cuffs and pleats on trousers, the right body types for pinstripes and double-breasteds. sartorial concerns I had to learn from the industry's authority. The other authority I continue to trust is my late father, who was a wholesale liquor salesman in Chicago, dressed up every day for work. His days were spent driving the gridded city streets to visit his customers, tuxedoed managers of downtown hotel dining rooms to T-shirted owners of blue-collar taverns on the Northwest Side. As I prepared for the office every day, the moment I slid the knot of the tie into the notch of my collar, I invoked my father's presence, trusting he'd approve of the combination of patterns I'd chosen. Gildo and I had spoken also of our ages and how it affected the way we dressed. And I could hear in his voice the affection he felt for his father. Perhaps our conversation was easy because I was not the fabulous person typical of fashion editors, something I think he recognized even in a transatlantic call. As people settled onto their designated spots on the bleacher stand seats, I introduced myself to Gildo, whereupon he embraced me and held my hand as we spoke, as Italians are wont to do. The moment we met, he did a quick, almost imperceptible up and down scan of my wardrobe. Given his attention to me, I could feel the heat of camera flashes and blunt gazes of people watching us. I discovered my seat was at the epicenter, a reward for my article. Rap began thumping and the parade of models started. One by one, each garbed young man stomped his way along the runway track. An invisible curtain had risen on a performance as choreographed and rehearsed as a Broadway drama, but absent dialogue or a discernible plot. Each model negotiated the runway maze with the confidence of a Theseus outwitting the Minotaur bull. Flawless young man who never blinked as they looked at some middle distant point over the heads of the crowd, turning mechanically, gracefully. And then, after 15 minutes, it was over. People applauded. The models appeared in a final strut. The crowd was up, recaping, reworking their electronic toys as if sources of oxygen. I felt infused with the glamour of the event, as if glamour was a sweet elixir that upon drinking makes you feel better looking, more confident, younger. Thus, the allure of fashion. Why am I headed home to another Barbara Stanwyck film and take-out Thai when I should be packing a Vuitton for a flight to Milan? On my walk to the Uptown #1, I ran into one of the models, garbed now in a dowdy oatmeal wool hat pulled low on his brow, a battered decaled skateboard tucked under an arm. He recognized me from my front row seat, calling out, "Hey man, thanks for coming." Off the runway, he was back to being just a young man, undistinguished in his wardrobe, but standing out as someone worth saying hello to on the runway of the city street that we shared.
Mihai Grunfeld was born in Cluj, Romania, where he lived under the repressive Ceausescu regime until he was 18 years old. In January of 1969, he staged a daring escape, traveling to Czechoslovakia, the beginning of a long journey that took him to Israel, Italy, Sweden, and Canada in search of a home in the West. Eventually, he settled in the U.S., where he obtained his PhD from UC Berkeley and recently retired from Vassar College, where he taught Spanish and Latin American literature. Mihai's memoir, Leaving, Memories of Romania, recounts that experience, and together with Sarah Levine Simon, he adapted his novel into the play The Dressmaker's Secret, which enjoyed a successful run here in New York City. In the essay he shares with us today, can you tell how unprepared I am here? Because blue jeans, where in Romania, when Mihai was a kid, blue jeans really were a symbol of freedom and symbol of the West. And I'm just so delighted to welcome him back here to the stage. Please say hello to Mihai Grunfeld, Blue Jeans.
Tata, do we have any relatives in America? My father and I are sitting in the grass, he sipping at his beer, engrossed in the folk dance on the stage, and me drinking my lemonade. His hand is tapping the rhythm on his leg while humming the tune. At home, he hates noise and loud music, so I never speak loudly or slam the door. But today is May the 1st, a day that always starts with people parading in front of the bleachers with the leaders of the Communist Party wave. Afterward, we take the bus to Hoya, a sloping green meadow where we can relax by listening to folk music while eating mititei, Romanian hot dogs. Tata doesn't answer my questions about relatives in America. I take another sip of my lemonade and ask again. He looks at me with curiosity. Why do you ask, Mishika? Well, I would like to have a pair of blue jeans. By the way he looks at me, I understand that he doesn't know how much about jeans. Tata is a lot older than most of my friends' parents and works all the time. So why would he know anything about how these fantastic pants mold tightly around your leg, making you admired by every girl in town? Why would he know anything about Clint Eastwood or John Wayne, who wear jeans in every movie? In stores here in Romania, they don't sell new jeans. If you have money, a real lot of money, you can buy a second-hand pair. If you want new ones, though, a relative in America has to send them to you. It has to be blood relative. Who else would do that? I know I have no money, we have no money, but I know almost nothing about my parents' past or their families. I know that Tata had been in Dachau. He has never spoken about that except that he was liberated by the Americans. He tells me that when the American army came, they asked him if he wanted to move to America. I couldn't believe he didn't accept the invitation. Why didn't you go, I asked. I returned here, Mishika, in case someone from my family was still alive. I could see the pain on his tense face. But you must have had parents, uncles, and aunts, or just relatives, and one of those could have survived and gone to America. I don't think any one of my relatives survived, Tata says. He remains quiet for a long time, looking in the distance towards the woods. Then he caresses my face with his rough hand and points to the stage. Listen to the music, Mishika. It's really nice. But Tata, I insist, sitting up, how do you know that everyone died? Actually, I don't know, Mishika, he says, his eyes avoiding mine. Maybe someone did survive. Could they be in America now? Maybe they could send me a pair of blue jeans. Would you like that? Yes, very much. They must be Levi's and very tight around the thighs. Father leans towards me and places a soft kiss on my forehead. Mishika, maybe someone did survive. Let me think. He caresses my face. I will write to America. I'm sure we'll find someone to send you a pair of jeans. The music stops, and a new group of folk dancers come on stage, dressed in white cotton pants, tight vests covered with colorful embroidery. I like the music, but do not like their peasant clothes. I close my eyes and slowly drift away, seeing myself wearing a new pair of tight Levi's, surrounded by the admiring looks of all my friends.
Deirdre Batson grew up in England with Irish parents and a large extended family in Ireland. Here in New York, where she's lived for more than 40 years, Deirdre pursued careers as both a neurophysiologist and science teacher. Her publications range wildly, from research papers in scientific journals to the Irish Echo, where she's written about Irish-American Celtic festivals. True to her roots, Deirdre embraces storytelling both on the page and on the stage. And what more incredible stage than Buckingham Palace, where Deirdre, in her story, Dressing for the Queen, gives us Yanks some tips on regal postures and posturing. Taking the Writers' Read stage now for the first time, this is Deirdre Batson.
It was the summer of 1968, and my family had been invited to attend a garden party at Buckingham Palace. If this sounds thrilling and impressive, put yourself in the minds of 16-year-old twins growing up in a nondescript town outside London, growing up in a rented council house, struggling to embrace the prospect of hobnobbing with a crowd of upper-caste people with whom we imagine nothing in common, except that someone close to us had received a palace honor. In our case, it was my father, awarded the Member of the Victorian Order for services to the royal family under the auspices of his long-standing royal warrant, the exclusive right of a company to provide service to the Queen. For this special gathering, with the royal family attending, we would need to dress the part. Our signature Levi's, literally molded when new to your body in a bath, squeezed into with great effort, zipped up only by lying flat without breathing, and successfully worn upright by rolling sideways and standing up with your knees locked, would be an unacceptable fashion choice. Margaret and I, deep in teenage turbulence, were singularly unimpressed at the prospect of this kind of dressing up. So we sought a subversive solution. Conferring in our bedroom, we brainstormed. As theater enthusiasts, why not become the very people we shied away from encountering? Aristocrats for a day. We assembled our costumes, hats and Laura Ashley frocks, bought for a previous wedding, but they were due. We hilariously practiced posh accents. Our local Hertfordshire dialect would not go down well in this company. My father had drilled us for years on the proper form of addressing the Queen, should that unlikely event ever happen. Ma'am, followed by a brief and modest curtsy. We duly rehearsed it all. This might have been frivolous amusement for us, but not for my Irish parents. They papered the walls with the obligatory Christmas photographs of random royal gatherings sent to my father. They named their daughters Elizabeth, Margaret, Alexandra, after royalty. Everything stopped on Christmas Day at 3 p.m. for the Queen's speech broadcast. What we daughters, in our youthful egocentricity, failed to appreciate that day was the emotional weight the occasion and its honor held for my parents. There was a beauty and reverence for them in serving royalty that we did not recognize. Growing up in Ireland, our father abandoned musical promise to work and help his family, joined the British Army, survived the war and the horrors of Dunkirk. Leaving his home and the country he loved, seeking opportunity and education, my father studied engineering at night, or driving a taxi and playing piano in the silent movies by day, shoehorned into a tiny London flat while our mother managed house and children. The royal family had acknowledged and rewarded his industriousness and loyalty, and our response should have mirrored that respect. The day of the party finally came. We donned our new personas and set off, stage ready. My parents were positively glowing as we all entered the hallowed palace grounds. The weather was sunny, the food was terrible, And the tea cold, my mother's sole objection. However, we mingled, chatting in our newspeak, and attempting to join the game we called queen spotting, whereby dense clumps of social climbers surrounded every member of the royal family present. Alas, each time we were disappointed to find merely Prince Charles or Princess Anne or even the Queen Mother at the core, never the Queen. At the party's close, strolling towards the gate, a little sad to be leaving, we heard a commotion behind us. Queen Elizabeth herself, tiny, surrounded by an entourage, she nevertheless carried an understated charisma. We stopped and turned, and though there was no one to impress, and the Queen was too distant to make eye contact, we dutifully and reverently curtsied, muttering, "Ma'am," in perfect form. Nope. Not done yet. In a faded Polaroid photograph taken outside the palace after the official ceremony, behind the ridiculous top hat and stiff suit, my father stands tall and proud. He was also wearing a costume that day, but his performance, unlike ours, was genuine and honestly deserved. The real stars were our parents, who had aspired to greatness and won a measure of it.
For those of you following along in your program, clearly unlike me, Gloria Caviglia was unable to join us today, but writer Beth Kwan has graciously stepped in to share her personal dressing up and down story. Beth is a writer and editor based here in New York City who served as communications director at Columbia University and Barnard College, and she's currently a speechwriter at NYU. A former journalist, Beth was an editor and writer at Women's Wear Daily and Newsweek, and her work has appeared in Allure, Time Out New York, The Village Voice, and Fortune, among other outlets. Her story is entitled Ready to Wear, and we are ready to hear it. Please say hello to Beth Kwan.
Some people have clothes for every occasion. I, on the other hand, have clothes for every size. Dresses in XS, S, M, and L. Trousers and tops in 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. Jeans in sizes 25 to 30. Why does my closet resemble the Nordstrom women's department? It accommodates the thinnest me to the fattest me. Clothes from before and after having kids, from pre to post-pandemic, from when I had healthy parents to after they got sick and died. It's fair to say I'm a stress eater, and I've had a few health issues along the way. After I had my second child, I carried 25 excess pounds, which, for my 5-foot frame, equates to several extra sizes. It turned out I had Hashimoto's disease, which meant my thyroid was underactive and contributing to weight gain. No sooner was I put on medication and on the path to recovery did I get GERD, where my doctor said no wine, red meat, tomatoes, citrus, chocolate, or nighttime snacking. It was depressing. But I complied. The pounds fell off. I once again fit into my small jeans. The GERD subsided. I reintroduced some of the forbidden items into my diet and put on a few pounds. I settled into a size medium. My BMI had me at officially overweight, but I was free of major health concerns and I was swimming regularly. I channeled Lizzo and tried to ignore society's expectations of women's bodies. Then the pandemic hit, and my daughter and I baked sourdough bread and made ice cream. Soon, I found myself reaching for the size large clothes again. This time, my thyroid was normal, but my blood sugar level crept up. My endocrinologist waved it off. It's a pandemic. But I knew it wasn't good. Plus, this time my vanity kicked in. I eventually hoped to wear my smaller clothes again. Some of them were chic, like a size 6 silk Diane von Furstenberg slip dress I had splurged on, a remnant of a foray into fashion journalism that had trained my eye on sartorial things. I started limiting portions and got back down to a small. During this time, my father had fallen ill, and my mother soon followed. My 2 sisters and I cared for them, traveling back and forth to Vermont to clean out their home and take care of their affairs. Just as the country was emerging from the pandemic, my mother died from chronic heart disease, and 4 months later, so did my father, afflicted with a similar condition. As I grieved, I took comfort in making the foods I had eaten with my parents, like glass noodles, sweet Korean pancakes, and spicy rice cakes. I ate Fritos and instant noodles, my mother's guilty pleasures. I didn't count calories. I gradually started needing the larger sizes. Upon the 1-year anniversary of my dad's death, I knew I had to do something. My endocrinologist had stopped taking my insurance, so I found a Chinese-American doctor through Google who had a tiger mom attitude. My blood sugar was at an all-time high. "You're getting older," she said. "Asians are at greater risk of getting diabetes. You have to make some changes." She sounded like my mom. Was it the familiarity or the fear that motivated me? I practiced portion control and exercised moderately. I dropped the weight. I can now wear my treasured DVF dress. I'm afraid I'll gain weight again. I always will be. During these years, I've curated my wardrobe, shedding items that have gone out of style, acquiring new ones, and donating pieces that remind me of an older version of myself. One day, I may trim my closet to just the size that fits me in the moment. But for now, I will keep a few extra sizes on hand, just in case.
Stephen Lewis is a former mentor at SUNY Empire State College. He's a longtime freelance writer and editor and current member of the Sarah Lawrence College Writing Institute faculty. Over the past 50 years, his work has been published widely, from the notable to the beyond obscure, from the New York Times and Washington Post to the Road Apple Review, including a biblically long list of parenting publications. He has 7 children and, at last count, 17 grandchildren. Stephen is Writers Read's senior editor, and the story he offered us with the caveat, "in case you need it," is entitled An Unfashionable Life, and it brings us along as he retraces his sartorial steps from the suburbs of Long Island to the wilds of Wisconsin and back again. It gives me great pleasure to welcome him back to our stage. Say hello to Stephen Lewis.
The curious thing here is how a stylish but empty-headed 17-year-old suburban boy who should not have been allowed near anything with a sharp point could use a compass to determine distance. Yet somewhere in the darkest recesses of an infantile cerebral cortex, something other than the usual stirrings down below were stirring. And one fall morning in 1963, I awoke, put on my chinos and Madras shirt, slipped into my desert boots, slurped my Frosted Flakes, and was about to head out to skip another day of school when I had a crazy idea. I need to find a college 1,000 miles away from home in order to save my life. I located a compass from my 10th grade geometry in a junk drawer of my unused school desk, found my father's Rand McNally road map in the glove compartment of his car, stuck the point on the black dot for Roslyn Heights, pulled out the sharpened pencil leg to what I miraculously figured was 1,000 miles, and made a circle. My gaze instantly drawn to Madison, Wisconsin, a city and state I guarantee I could not have previously identified on a map. Why? No need to understand sine or cosine here. A boy I hardly knew from high school had gone to the U the year before and returned home wearing the coolest, manliest, toughest red jacket with white leather sleeves, large capital letters arched across the back, WISCONSIN. My covetousness was a syllogism. I love that jacket. I have to have that jacket. Therefore, I must go to Wisconsin. I applied for admission that day, another big mystery. And 5 months later, received a letter from the university that began, "Congratulations. Now you are a Badger." It pains me to admit right now that I was not sure what that meant or what a Badger was. When I asked my mother to explain, her face drained of its blood, her lips trembling. Having had a few slow-to-mature boys of my own, I know now she was wondering how such a bright woman could have reared such a stupid child. Ergo, ipso facto, QED, right after Labor Day, 1964, I heaved a gray Samsonite suitcase full of preppy clothes into the trunk of my parents' car, and with no earthly ambition other than to wear a red Wisconsin jacket for the rest of my life, we drove off to LaGuardia. Ambling across the tarmac, I paused at the Eastern Airlines drop-down steps, glanced back at my dubious parents, and just as I lifted a wingtip shoe to step into the future, I said to myself, "Your life will never again be the same." I didn't know where the voice came from or what it meant, but I was sure it had everything to do with that jacket. Fast forward 2.5 months. When I returned home for Thanksgiving, Roslyn Heights looked less like my hometown than a stage set for an episode of Ozzie and Harriet. And the people who claimed to be my parents barely recognized the long-haired, bearded creature in a black T-shirt, olive green army jacket, and scuffed engineer boots who wandered in and took up residence in their son's bedroom. 59 years later, I hardly remember that empty vessel I left behind on the LaGuardia tarmac. Not the wingtop tips, nor the contents of that Samsonite suitcase, or the fate of the prized red and white Wisconsin jacket that I bought and wore through a blisteringly hot afternoon on my second day as a Badger. I am certain that I lost track of that gorgeous jacket within weeks of the first few synapse connecting, cocoon ripping, mind-blowing, dope smoking, cosmic egg cracking experiences in Madison, all leading to this uncombed, unkempt, unstylish, 77-year-old overgrown boy standing in front of you, hoping you don't notice the stains on my white shirt. You'll notice I'm not leaving the stage. Not on the program, but this is actually a false ending because we have one more story to share with you from Ed McCann, the founder of Writers Read. For nearly a decade, Ed and a team of dedicated volunteers have worked to present curated literary events with partners like Carnegie Hall, Vassar College, the National Arts Club, and of course, City Winery. Ed's own writing has appeared in many national magazines and literary journals, and he's going to close today's Dressing Up and Dressing Down with a piece he calls My New Wardrobe. Please welcome back to the stage Ed McCann.
Thank you, Stephen. In the Hudson Valley, in the mid-1980s, as a new college graduate and fledgling local television writer and producer, I mostly wore jeans and patterned acrylic sweaters to work each day. And on a day with a client meeting, I would up the ante with iron slacks and shined shoes. In the 90s, while creating instructional and marketing videos at the more upscale Culinary Institute of America, I wore collared shirts and neckties. And when my partner Richard and I launched a production company focused on TV, publishing, and public relations events, I more often wore blazers at meetings, while boarding aircraft, or were attending media events. On cold days, I added a wool topcoat and scarf, and on rainy ones, a calf-length olive green London Fog raincoat with lapels and belt loops and a zip-out lining. Getting in and out of a cab in that getup, complete with a leather briefcase and umbrella, was a rather awkward affair. Cruising toward middle age, those garments and accessories, combined with my graying temples, prompted Midtown doormen and maitre d's to greet me with a deference and respect I found surprising. Only a decade earlier, I'd been an undergraduate in a t-shirt and a backpack. And while I did take a certain pride in how I looked in a three-piece suit or tuxedo, this professional grown-up wardrobe most often felt like a costume that I was grateful to shed at day's end. As our business grew and evolved, I had less need for traditional business attire. In our home office and studio, every day is Casual Friday. To the extent I have any sartorial standards, the COVID-19 pandemic relaxed them further. And during the sequester, Richard and I had no in-person meetings. And as that summer turned to fall, I switched from the khaki shorts and t-shirts I'd been wearing each day, and often for several days running, to hoodies and sweatpants. The only must-have accessory in my wardrobe during those uncertain days was a mask. A deep dive in my closet revealed I owned 3 pairs of sweats, each a different shade of gray. There's the heather gray pair with elastic at the waist and ankles, a darker pair with a drawstring that transitions to pajamas at day's end, and a luxurious charcoal pair of merino wool loungers that I found at the Orvis outlet. I came to think of those as my dress-up pants. I mean, who actually needs a belt? For virtual meetings, I'd pull on a collared Zoom shirt and sometimes even a V-neck sweater, but most days I'd step out of bed into shorts or sweats and a pair of orange paint-splattered Crocs, ready to greet the day and the few neighbors I might encounter at their school bus stop or mailbox on the morning dog walk. To my neighbors and the drivers who wave as they pass me on our rural road, I'm not a writer or producer, not an editor or project manager. I'm that guy walking the dog, wearing droopy sweatpants and orange rubber clown shoes. Just how many of the clothes I own do I actually wear any longer? The pandemic prompted a cringing reassessment with my closet, a reckoning with dozens of silk ties and argyle socks I no longer wear. I appreciate that there are fewer loads of laundry to contend with these days and that we rarely have to visit the dry cleaner. And while I can summon a vague nostalgia about my younger dress-up days, I am slowly and comfortably migrating toward an earlier and perhaps truer edition of myself. That jeans and t-shirt undergraduate with a backpack slung over his shoulder instead of the leather briefcase clutched in his hand. So please, let me know if you're interested in that beautiful London Fog raincoat with the lapels and belt loop and plaid flannel zip-out lining, because it's in perfect condition. Will all the writers please come back? All the writers up on stage. I am so delighted that you're all here today, by the way. Thank you. Thank you. Fabulous. We built Writers Read around live performances like this one, and I am so proud to be here with this group of fine writers and proud of what a small group of committed, unpaid volunteers has accomplished. Thank you. And continues to build with me. Thank you to our venue partner, City Winery, and to our sponsor, the New York State Writers Institute, for their support of our efforts here today. There are lots of moving parts to this organization, and we have room and need for volunteer committee members or board members to help us steer it, particularly in the areas of marketing and finance. If you are interested, let's please talk during the reception, and you can always reach me with thoughts or suggestions via email, ed@writersread.org. I hope you'll allow us to stay in touch by joining our email list. I know that you all, there's nothing more that you want than more email. I know this. But at the bottom of every page on our website, there's an opportunity to sign up to our email list. We send one like once a month, maybe twice a month, but it will tell you about our upcoming events, the submission prompts that we have coming up, and it will allow us to keep in touch. So if you're interested, please let's talk during the reception. Keep in touch via the email list. And please flag your calendars to join us again in this room on Sunday, October 8th. That's going to be our last live event of the year. In honor of Italian Heritage Month, we put out a prompt called That's Italian. And we'll be doing a show celebrating Italian things and Italian-American things Sunday, October 8th, same time. Please do tell your friends about us, consider a charitable gift, take your program with you, and because we cannot do what we do without you, this round of applause from us is for all of you. Thank you. Now, please do not rush off where there is still wine to drink and people to meet. And please join us. We're going to be schmoozing for an hour out here in the gallery with some wine and cheese and charcuterie, and let's talk. But before we go, one last thing. We're going to do a bow. Hold on. Come on out here. Can we do this? Okay.